Well, hi guys, welcome. And who dat? I'm Joe. Thanks for tuning in to Rosenfield 10, where I cover our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints. Are you a Who Dat fan? If you're a Who Dat fan, subscribe to my channel. I love the Saints as much as you do. I'm a fellow fan. Think of me as a friend, a coworker who loves the Saints so much. And every time you see me, you'll want to talk about them. That's what my videos are for. I'm letting you know what I'm thinking. You tell me what you're thinking in the comments below. I'll respond to my comments. Let's keep it in the Who Dat family and let's talk a little black and gold football. This is the last month of my monthly look into the Saints' greatest positions of need. We're going to do this one for the month of April. And then I think the week before the draft, we'll have another look at what we're going to focus going into the draft, what we need going into the draft, that kind of thing. Well, we're pretty close. We're only a little more than 2 weeks away now, about 2 weeks away. So this will be positions of need for the Saints as the roster stands right now, but we do have a couple of more weeks before the draft, so there may be some additions in free agency. So we'll take a look at this again the week before the draft, and we'll focus on that as just what should we look at in the draft. And remember, when you're drafting, you're not only drafting for position of need. You're sometimes going to grab players at positions you don't really need, but they're too good to pass up and stuff like that. So let's look at what I think this team needs as we stand right now. And this is the big list. I've got 10 of them, 10 positions mentioned here. And yeah, these are the most important positions of need for the Saints, I think. I'll pull this down and show the roster in a minute, and we'll talk about why. But our number one needs for this team are certainly a starting nickelback. We're talking about that star, a cornerback who's going to play in the slot, somebody to take Alontae Taylor's place. We've got Terrell Burgess on the roster, but we need us a starting nickel. I think that's the most important thing. It's not typically something you address in the first round of a draft, but I think it's the most glaring need that this team has right now, along with wide receiver and edge rusher. Now, I'll say those are the two that I would kind of lean heavily towards as much as Nickelback. I think another wide receiver, a big time playmaker would be great, but another wide receiver that you feel is going to make the roster would be pretty good too. And the same thing with edge rusher. We would love to have a stud opposite Chase Young, but we have Carl Granderson. We're trying to get Cam Jordan back. But at the very least, some definite depth at edge rusher is something that the team needs. And then the next thing I'm looking at is defensive line. All three of our defensive linemen were in the last year of their contract this year. However, today we extended Brian Bresee. We gave him his fifth year option, which means he'll be on the team this year and next year. Next year, under the fifth year option, he'll be making, I believe, $13 million. Now, that's way more than I want to pay Brian Bresee, but I see the logic and why the Saints are doing it. If we're going to have all three starting defensive linemen gone after next year, yeah, you go ahead and secure the youngest one with the biggest upside. $13 million isn't a whole heck of a lot to pay for a starting defensive lineman in the league. But I think Brian Bresee going to have to show some serious production this year in this defense to justify the $13 million he'll be making in 2027. The next positions I'm looking at for positions of need, we need depth at center, and I think that's super important. Before depth at anything else, we got to get a center in here, and we've got a couple of bodies that can do it. Maybe Torricelli Simpkins, maybe Nick Saldiveri, but and in cornerback, that's not nickelback. That's an actual outside cornerback. If you get a guy like Mansour Delaney in the first round, you're getting a starter, but we really need some depth there. And everything else is kind of like depth pieces. I have right guard specifically mentioned, but a guard in particular, we've got Dylan Reduns now, but it'd be nice to replace Cesar Ruiz with a stud right guard, but it would also be nice to have better players as depth. Tight end, same thing. We're too top heavy, but we could use some depth. And then offensive tackle, I hate our room after the starters. And running back, we've got a loaded room now, but in a year it won't be so loaded. So let's put the positions over here and we'll pull up the offense first and we'll talk about positions of need there. The number one position of need, in my opinion, is God, if we could get a right guard to start ahead of Cesar Ruiz, that would be nice. That's what I would want more than anything to make this team better. It's not romantic and it's not exciting, and nobody wants to draft an offensive lineman for the third year in a row in the first round. Of course, if you trade down and you end up getting Ioane at guard and you pick up a couple extra picks, and then that I think a guard in the first round would be a lot more palatable for us Saints fans. I think if we trade down and pick up extra pieces and we still hit on some of the exciting picks later, that would probably be the only way we would address offensive line in the first round by trading down. To me, that's the most important piece missing here. Right guard. I can't stand Cesar Ruiz as a starter for us. And the next glaring need would be wide receiver. Devon Bailey is a good player. If he stays healthy, I think he'll be fine in this offense. I have a lot of faith in Jalen Polk being a decent number three. So at wide receiver, it could be a question of just getting depth. But if you address wide receiver in the first couple of picks in the draft, with the first round, second round, or third round pick, you're going to get a pretty talented guy in this deep class of wide receiver this year. So you're thinking if you get a wide receiver in the draft in the first three rounds, you're going to get somebody who could literally compete with Devon Bailey and Jalen Polk. That's what you're thinking. So wide receiver is pretty important. Of course, nobody wants to get the wide receiver in the first round. As important as it may be, it's the second most important position on this list here of mine. I don't have guard number one. We've addressed guard with David Edwards on the left side. So you got half the problem solved, and then you're hoping Cesar Ruiz plays to the best of his abilities as a starter. It would be nice. Having Dylan Reduns as a backup is pretty nice, even though that's a guy that we obviously replaced with Edwards. I wouldn't want Dylan Reduns to have to start half the season for us again. But in my opinion, Dylan Reduns and Cesar Ruiz are almost, the same. I mean, Ruiz is a better player, but I don't know. We got to see a lot more from that dude. So having Dylan Reduns the backup, great. You have Torricelli Simpkins who can do backup guard. You have Will Sherman that can play backup guard. You have Xavier Truss who can play backup guard, and you also have Nick Saldiveri who's a backup guard. So maybe some of them pieces work. And so for that reason, I bumped right guard down on my list here. But man, to replace Cesar Ruiz with a bona fide starter, that's an average guy, which would be the output you're getting from Cesar Ruiz on a good day anyway. Yeah, guard's important to me. Right guard would be important to me. But I'm gonna do this the right way. We're gonna roll with Cesar Ruiz. We've got Dylan Reduns in case Cesar Ruiz falls off a cliff or whatever, and then we're probably gonna get a developmental guy in the interior of the offensive line at some point in the draft. Wide receiver, you get a guy in the first, second, or third round, you feel like they're competing with Bailey and Polk. So it would be nice to address wide receiver, especially in the draft where it's deep. Edge rusher is another position in the draft that's very deep. We're going to get to defense in a minute. Uh, Center, backup center, we need it. If you can draft a guy like Pat Coogan in the sixth round or fifth round who can play center or guard, That would be a nice pickup because then you take care of your depth at guard and at center. That would be nice. But you need somebody that's going to be a designated backup center here. I don't want to go into the year without a backup center. We had to make a move to get Luke Fortner in here last year, right before the season started. And so I'm thinking if we don't get a backup center in free agency in the next couple of weeks or after the draft, it's going to have to be in the draft. So you get an interior offensive lineman and a wide receiver, and you're pretty good at offense after that. I got three more positions listed here, though: tight end, offensive tackle, running back. Offensive tackle, because I don't really particularly care about Awesome Richards or Will Sherman being my primary backup tackle. They wouldn't have been our primary backup tackle last year if Landon Young would have stayed healthy. And Landon Young was our backup tackle. And I think we could improve from a guy like Landon Young. But I keep harping on that. We could actually go and sign Landon Young right now, and he'd probably start ahead of these backup tackles. And that's just not a position I want to be in. You're really good at starting tackle, which means you're really going to be hurting if either one of them misses time. So I'm addressing tackle, in my opinion. I think we could do it. I think we can go and get a piece of free agency that would make me feel more comfortable. Tight end's another thing. I don't like the room after Fant. I mean, we've got pieces and we're hoping somebody's okay. And if they're just the number three guy, then I guess it's not so bad. Mitchell Payton's a good run blocker, and then you get yourself your fourth tight end, and then you're good. But getting another piece in here that could be an eventual starter, that's an actual good run blocker, would be nice. Mitchell Payton's a good run blocker, but I don't think I don't think he's going to develop into a eventual number two tight end on this team. So getting a guy in the draft at tight end that is a really good run blocker, he'd probably be the best run blocker on the team to start with. We're not that good at tight end there. Of course, we leave our tackles on an island all the time, so maybe Kellen Moore doesn't want a tight end that can run block. Maybe he doesn't want that. Maybe that's the reason why we can't run the ball if he doesn't want that. But I think it's important. A couple of guys that come to mind are Sam Roush and Eli Raridon. Both of them are good run blocking tight ends coming in the draft, and they both have athletic ability and a lot of promise as a pass catcher. And so a guy like that in the third or fourth round would make me happy, I think. And yeah, maybe Fant's here for 2 years. Maybe this guy's just developing at first. And then when Fant's gone, you don't have to worry about it so much. And Johnson, you'll have yourself a run blocking tight end who can make something happen as a pass catcher. That would be nice. And the last offensive position I have here, running back. We're good this year if Kamara comes back and Kendre Miller stays healthy and Devin Neal and Audric Estime look fine to me. So you got Achane, Devin Neal, and Audric Estime. I think that's a fine room. So I've got running back the bottom of the list. Even without Kamara and Kendre Miller, I'm still okay with our running backs. But I'm going to put it here. A chance of getting Jeremiah Love in the first round, I wouldn't pass him up. And then if there's a running back later on that you want to get, especially somebody that with return ability or somebody, with the upside that you think can develop. Because Kendre Miller and Alvin Kamara should be gone after this year at the very latest. And so, yeah, you might want a better piece there. All right, that's the offense. Let's pull up the defense, and we're going to talk about positions in need here. And the number one is nickelback. We don't have a designated nickelback slot here. Our nickelback right now is Lord only knows. Terrell Burgess can do it. I'm so glad we re-signed him. He's going to be like our veteran backup. He's going to be a good special teamer, and he can be our nickelback in a crunch if something happens. But we need to go and get a guy. I kind of thought we needed a couple of guys. I thought we needed a veteran in free agency that could do nickel and a veteran in free agency that could play outside. And then I still thought we should address nickel another time after that. So the Saints talk about wanting a safety at the nickelback. That's their preferred option. So And I've also heard them say they would like to see Quincy Riley stay on the outside. So you put all that together and you're thinking, okay, a safety's going to play nickelback. Terrell Burgess is a safety. And maybe Jonas Sanker is that guy. I think Jonas Sanker would be a really nice star. And then you have Blackman and Reed to play safety, and you're good to go. You got Howden as a backup, Burgess as a backup. So maybe that's their plan at nickelback. There's a bunch of good nickels in the draft. A lot. Some of them are corners. Some of them are safeties. Caleb Downs would be a good safety at the nickel. Deontay Scott would be a good cornerback at the nickel. Traden Stukes would be a great cornerback at the nickel. But you can also go and get Jalen Kilgore, safety, who could play the nickel. Bud Clark is a safety that can play the nickel. Zaki Wheatley is a safety that can play the nickel. So there's a lot of options. You can go cornerback at nickel too. People are looking at D'Angelo Pons. You never know. But Nickelback is certainly the biggest hole on the team in general, the biggest hole on the defense for me. And whichever way this team wants to address it, it's got to be addressed. So we'll see what happens. I still think getting one in free agency would be nice, and then letting the chips fall as they may in the draft. And if you get Downs in the first round, or Keontae Scott in the second round, or Jalen Kilgore, trading Stukes in the third round, Zakee Wheatley, and then you'll be set pretty good if you go and get a veteran at nickel. So nickelback is hugely important, most important position to fill. And I hear um, NOF talking about how bad we need an edge rusher. And I think Carl Granderson is a good edge rusher. I mean, Chase Young and Carl Granderson was our starters last year, right? And then Cam was kind of like the backup, and Cam ended up producing a lot. And so that production is what's missing, and I think that's what's got NOF flipping out. They don't even consider Grando as a decent starter. And I think Grando's going to play better this year now that he's lost all that weight and he's, getting accustomed to this defense and he's already doing all right at it. So, maybe Grando is a good starter here. Now, if you go and get an edge rusher in the first round, he's going to be your starter. Grando's going to factor in, and we may still re-sign Cam Jordan. But I admit depth, at the very least, is missing at edge rusher. You don't have Cam now, and no matter how much Chris Rump or Fadil Diggs can improve from last year or improve as a player, you still feel like you need some depth there. You're missing Cam Jordan. So, yeah. I'm not in panic mode. I think if you would, the draft class is deep at edge rusher. I think you can get a rotational pass rush situational guy in this draft in the fourth round. You could get the guy in the late fourth round. And if he comes in and he's just a rotational piece and he's a pass rush specialist and you're only using him every now and then, it's Young and Grando, and then you've got some Rumpf and you've got some Diggs and this new guy, and then I think it would be okay. But edge rusher's primo spot to, first round position to get. That's primo. So is it Ruben Bain? Is it David Bailey? Would you guys be happy if it was Ruben Bain? Edge rushers there. It's pretty important. Next is defensive line. And I said it before, Brian Bresee. We signed him to the fifth year option. So he'll be here this year and next year. So now we only have to replace two players because Shepard will be gone after this year. Gottschall will be gone after this year. Yeah, so I thought we should bring back Jonathan Bullard to have some depth. Then you've got Vernon Broughton, who we are hoping is going to be that second edge, second defensive end opposite Brian Bresee. And it kind of still leaves a hole at defensive tackle. When you re-sign John Ridgeway, you still got Christian Boyd. So a lot of people don't think about defensive line. I think if at any point in this draft we grab a defensive lineman, whether it be a nose tackle defensive tackle type or a three tech defensive tackle who can play the end in a three-man front, or whether it's a really big edge rusher who might be stuck playing an end position. He might not come on the field until we have a four-man front or something like that, but at some point, just grab another body for this defensive line, and I'll be happy. I might say center is a bigger need because you know, I have more faith in Christian Boyd playing defensive tackle for us than I do Torricelli Simpkins playing center for us. Okay, so, but yeah, I've got defensive line right there with center. Okay, cornerback is next, outside cornerback. We're really good if we're healthy. Kool-Aid McKinstry, Quincy Riley. I love those guys. And Isaac Yadam, we'll see. That's where the depth comes in. Having one more cornerback. You like to be four deep. Rajon Wright. I like what I see in Rajon Wright. I like what I saw with Price in preseason too. So we'll see. Beanie Beanie Bishop is another guy that can play nickel. That's another guy that he might be a cornerback slash safety type, and maybe he's listed as a cornerback on the Saints roster because he's allocated as a nickelback, but he's another guy that can play nickel too. So what else are we looking at on defense? Yeah, that was it. I mean, outside corner and nickel. So there you go. That's the roster breakdown, and those are the positions I think that we're in most desperate need for. The Saints have done a good job in free agency, so we don't really have a glaring hole anywhere except for Nickelback, and in my opinion, right guard. But they're going to go in with Cesar Ruiz at right guard, so we need a nickel. Everybody wants another edge that could be a starter. Everyone wants a wide receiver that could be a starter. And then, you need depth after that. I would be pretty happy with a future starter at defensive tackle. Just don't know what we have with Vernon Broughton, so maybe we're okay. Maybe Brian Brissy plays way better this year, and then he's worth the extension, and maybe Vernon Broughton steps up, and then you just get your one defensive line piece, somebody to take Godchaux's place eventually. Yeah, you need a backup center. You need some depth at outside corner. That backup interior offensive lineman that could play center or guard would be nice because I still think you need some depth at guard. You need depth at tight end or a really good run blocker who can develop as a pass catcher. And yeah, depth all across the offensive line, center, guard, and tackle. And in the running back, because you don't know what's going on with Kamara, and Miller's going to be gone soon. So there you go. Positions of need for the month of April. And this is a couple of weeks before the draft. And I would love to think about the draft and look at these positions and think, well, this is what we're going to address in the draft. But we've got a couple more weeks of free agency to go. So subscribe to my channel. And then the week of the draft, we're going to have a bunch of videos. We're going to talk about those positions of need going into the draft. We're probably going to have a few more mocks in the next week and a half as well. So subscribe. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Who dat?